Right? Yeah. Yeah, I have a problem though. If I wasn't there with Abraham, and I don't know, it was what I could read was a great relationship Abraham had with God, and I wasn't there with Isaiah, Jeremiah, or any of the other prophets. As much as you weren't there for what Muhammad received of God. And whatever Muhammad received of God was for Muhammad. And I don't understand the problem. God spoke to Abraham, I'm not having a child with Sarai. My woman, my wife, has never been barren. So the things that God had intended for Abraham is different than the things he has intended for me. And what about Muhammad? Sure. I guess Muhammad figured out that Abraham was not what God spoke to Abraham about was not for him, or Isaiah, or Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets, right? I doubt Muhammad, wife was barren, and whatever God spoke to Abraham about, I believe Muhammad said, guess what? If Muhammad, if God can speak to Abraham, God can speak to Muhammad. Plain and simple, right? We're not discrediting Muhammad. We're not discrediting Abraham or any of the other prophets. I'm just stating a fact. And the fact is, Muhammad just walked around and said, you know what? If God directed Abraham, and Abraham had a personal relationship with God, so did Isaac, so did Jacob, so did Jeremiah, I want one too. Is there a problem? You're going to get angry? You're going to get upset? I'm sure Muhammad turned around and said, you know what? Abraham's got one. And that's what Christians do. Christians, but whatever God said to Moses, which God, I'm not freeing. God hasn't directed me to free enslaved people or oppressed people. God hasn't directed me, commanded me to be like a Moses. So, but God has spoken to me, but He hasn't spoken to me of the same things He spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, or Muhammad. So what's the problem? I don't have to spend my life interpreting what he spoke to another man. We're talking about God. I don't have to sit there and interpret or get taught what God meant or what Muhammad meant by his writings, because that's doing me no good. That's not doing me any good. God is not directing. Read. God never directed two people to do the same thing except obey his voice. But everybody had a different relationship. Read the writings of Muhammad. His writings are distinct than Abraham, Isaac, Moses, right? Peter, James, and John, because he had a different relationship with God. So why are you striving toward a man? Why are you following after the man? I don't know. God probably spoke to Peter, James, and John, but he didn't speak to me that way. I wasn't there. I'm born right now, and guess what? What God has to say to me is going to be different than what he spoke to John, James, Peter, Muhammad, or Abraham. Very simple. When God delivered me from following another man, he delivered me to his truth. So if Muhammad figured out that I want a relationship like Abraham did, he's not going to go through Abraham. He went straight to God. And God revealed himself to Muhammad like he revealed himself to Abraham, Isaac, Peter, James, and John. There's no question. There's no problem. The problem is when we start to interpret what they said. And that's not what God the Father intended for Abraham. Isaac, Moses, Muhammad, Peter. God intends for us to have an intimate relationship with him. So where's the problem? Is the problem that you don't have a relationship with God? And that you have to piggyback on the prophets who did obey him? Because I'm not fulfilling what God intended for someone else's life. That's not going to give me peace. That's going to not give peace to the world. I'm not going to go fulfill what God expects from them. I'm going to do what God expects from me. If I do what God expects from him, that's going to bring me peace, like Muhammad, Abraham did. If I have a personal relationship with God, that's what Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac did. So what's the problem? Where could the problem be?